IVF has been an issue that has become political. Yeah. A lot of people talking about it. What's the Trump administration going to do when it comes to IVF if you get elected?
Right. Well, as you know, I was always for IVF right from the beginning.
How would this work if a state, and you believe that states should have the right to make these decisions, if a state bans IVF, but Donald Trump says he wants to guarantee and or pay for IVF for everyone who wants it, how would that work if a state banned it?
Well, John, I think it's such a ridiculous hypothetical because Alabama, which is maybe the most conservative state in the entire union, has actively protected fertility access and fertility treatments. There's no state in the union, whether a right-wing state or a left-wing state, that I think is trying to ban access to fertility treatments. And if Alabama is protecting this stuff, I think it's safe to say the whole country is as well. So,
well, but the court,
look,
but there is a court.
I think that what Donald Trump again wants to do is protect access.
Who's to say there's not another court in another state that could decide that IVF should be banned? It happened in Alabama for a minute. You also voted against a measure in the Senate that would have guaranteed access to IVF around the country. So it's possible, right?
Well, two things, John. First of all, yes, a court made that decision in Alabama, and like the next second, the Alabama state legislature fixed that problem and ensured women had access to these fertility treatments. And all that I voted on, John, is for religious liberty.
Is this a daily occurrence now where Trump's VP is sent in front of an audience in a desperate attempt to make the former president look better, but somehow comes out looking worse? Doesn't Vance know what happened to his last VP?
You guys in the media, you're acting like Donald Trump filmed a TV commercial at a gravesite. He was there providing emotional support to a lot of brave Americans who lost loved ones they never should have lost. And there happened to be a camera there, and somebody gave him permission to have that camera there.
No, J.D. Vance, you were quite literally there to make an ad. You were making a political advertisement, and you were cutting clips for political campaigning activity, which should not be happening in Arlington Cemetery. The veterans, I've spoken to the veterans who work for the MeidasTouch network. You see a lot of them on the show, Fred Wellman, Ken Harbaugh, and others. They were Denver Riggleman, absolutely livid at what the Trump campaign did at the Arlington Cemetery. I'm livid. The nation is livid. What a horrific thing to do.
So let's take a few of J.D. Vance's examples of where he's shown himself to be even worse of a liability for the ticket than Trump is, or possibly just as bad as Trump is on the ticket, which is saying a lot because Trump has had years to work up to how bad he is for his own candidacy. So J.D. Vance was booed in front of a firefighters union because he tried to pretend that he was pro-union despite the fact that his policies say otherwise, Trump's policies say otherwise.
Well, good morning.
Who's on the hill and who's watching the valley?
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Well, Semper Fi, guys. We got some. It sounds like we got some fans and some haters. That's okay. Listen to what I have to say here, and I'll make my pitch.
And that Trump actually had a claim against him recently from UAW, the union, because he joked with Elon Musk about how great it is to fire some workers who are trying to strike, which, as it turns out, is an illegal threat against union workers. So this is why he was booed. But does this stop him? No. Then he actually tries to defend what happened at Arlington Cemetery, seemingly admitting that there was an altercation. Yes, there was an altercation. An employee filed a report regarding that altercation and then decided not to pursue it because of fear of Trump supporter retaliation. Her fear is not so unwarranted. We saw Justice Merchan's daughter having to be part of a protective gag order because of the amount of threats against her because she dared to be the daughter of a judge who was overseeing Trump's trial. This is where we're at with somebody who's trying to become the president of the United States, and Vance is very bad at trying to defend him, and he's very bad at trying to defend himself. In fact, I don't think he really wants to defend himself at all. Now, here's what he has to say about IVF, a really crucial and important issue for the vast majority of Americans.
Look, the president, I'm sure, will tell the American people how he's going to vote on it eventually, but he wasn't making an announcement last night.
So it was a grammar thing.
Sorry, could you repeat that, John?
It was a grammar thing. It was a speech thing. It was somehow some confusion in the words that he chose. Senator Vance, can you hear me?
It's like super staticky.
Senator Vance.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
I may be super staticky. You may not be hearing the loud baritone of my voice here. You were talking about Donald Trump's social media. Would you describe his posts over the last 48 hours as lifting people up, quoting, reposting QAnon statements, reposting these misogynistic memes about Vice President Harris and Hillary Clinton? That's the kind of open discussion that you think is lifting people up?
Oh, John, I think if you look at Donald Trump's full campaign appearances and, yes, his social media appearances, what you see is two things. A guy with an agenda to lower prices and bring back American prosperity, and a political candidate who isn't stodgy, who likes to have some fun and likes to tell some jokes. I'd much rather have a candidate who's willing to go off script, who's willing to give every interview, and is willing to tell some jokes. I do think that's how you lift people up.
So if J.D. Vance actually thought that IVF should be protected in this country, he could have voted in the Senate to protect it federally. But he actually either doesn't care at all about it or doesn't care enough about it to make sure that every American, despite where they live or what judge they might come across, can have the right to try to plan a family and produce children, even if they're having difficulty on their own. This is where this family values candidate evidently lands. And because, as we know, Justice Kavanaugh, when he overturned Roe, he said, let's leave it to the states. Only somebody who has never had their civil rights affected would trust the states to protect it. And there's a lot of evidence before J.D. Vance put that vote in the Senate that the states aren't very good at protecting women's rights, protecting family rights, protecting an individual's ability to plan a family. Let's look at Texas. Despite the fact that the FDA regulates the abortion pill, a Trump-appointed judge there decided to ban it nationally. The Supreme Court did step in and stop it, but they stopped it based on something called standing, which means that they procedurally stopped it, not substantively, which means somebody else can bring that lawsuit. An abortion pill is essentially on the ballot in November because do we trust the Supreme Court to substantively stand behind the abortion pill? Probably not. Look at Idaho. With the law there, people, because of how restrictive that law there, if you're a woman in Idaho and you're at risk of losing an organ because you're pregnant and need an abortion, the doctors there are too afraid to give it and they air vac you out of the country. And when that went up to the Supreme Court basically kicked the can down the road for that one too. So the Supreme Court hasn't been very good at stepping in and trying to help women when they're in these dire situations, either health-wise or trying to figure out how to plan their families. So yes, in Alabama, a judge there outlawed it and the state legislature passed it. But do you really want somebody, a woman or a father or anybody in any other state to feel so safe and secure that all these judges and all the state legislatures everywhere is going to protect a family's right to IVF? Well, you shouldn't, based on the experience. And J.D. Vance doesn't care enough because he could have voted for national protection of IVF, and he chose not to. And that says everything about how he actually feels about the issue.
You take a look at bacon and some of these products, and some people don't eat bacon anymore. And we are going to get the energy prices down. When we get energy down, you know, this was caused by their horrible energy wind. They want wind all over the place. But when it doesn't blow, we have a little problem.
So what would you do day one?
Day one, it's going to be about, one, implementing my plan for what I call an opportunity economy. I've already laid out a number of proposals in that regard, which include what we're going to do to bring down the cost of everyday goods, what we're going to do to invest in America's small businesses, what we're going to do to invest in families, for example, extending the child tax credit to $6,000 for families for the first year of their child's life, to help them buy a car seat, to help them buy baby clothes, a crib. There's the work that we're going to do that is about investing in the American family around affordable housing, a big issue in our country right now. So there are a number of things on day one.
Kamala's plan to focus on the middle class day one is crucial. The middle class built this country. Rich people can't buy enough yachts to keep the economy going. But even if I didn't solidly agree with her position, the idea of Trump in dictator garbs on day one would be enough not to have me vote for him.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.